I never imagined it would end this way, on Christmas morning. But that's exactly what happened. There I was, standing in my mother's perfectly decorated living room, holding a tray of cinnamon rolls I had baked at 5 a.m. And then my younger sister Harper, still in her silk robe, looked me in the eye and said it. We had a family vote. You're no longer one of us. The room fell silent. Even the fireplace crackled quieter, like it, too, was stunned. But I wasn't. I slowly reached into my leather messenger bag and pulled out a bright red folder. I placed it under the Christmas tree, right where the gifts used to go. Open it, I said. That folder had been 7 years in the making, and it held everything. You see, my name is Grace Whitman, I'm 31, and until this year, I was the designated fixer of my family. The dependable one. The ATM with a heartbeat. I paid for Harper's college when she wanted to switch majors, 4 times. I bailed my brother Jake out of his entrepreneurial dreams at least twice a year. And Mom? She knew just the right tone to use when the mortgage was late again. Every emergency, every guilt trip, every "you know we love you" came with a price tag. And I paid it, again and again. Until one fall evening, I showed up early for Sunday dinner and overheard them laughing about me through the patio door. Calling me lonely. Calling me easy. Calling me the gift that keeps on giving. That night, I didn't cry. I opened Excel. And when Christmas morning came, I arrived with a red folder. Inside was every dollar, every lie. Every receipt. What happened next? Changed everything. If this story already hits too close to home, let me know where you're watching from. I promise, you're not the only one. And if you've ever had to choose peace over people, stick around. Because that red folder? It wasn't revenge. It was my freedom. Growing up in Naperville, Illinois, I used to think we were a normal middle-class family. We had a small house with green shutters and a maple tree out front that turned fiery red every fall. Mom taught 5th grade at the local school. Dad worked in logistics, mostly gone before breakfast and back after dinner. My little sister Harper was bubbly, artsy, and always the favorite. And Jake, our youngest, was the kind of kid who got away with everything just by flashing a lazy grin. But when I was 16, the bottom fell out. Dad sat us down one Sunday morning and said he was moving to Arizona with his colleague, a woman none of us had ever heard of. Mom didn't scream. She didn't cry in front of us. She just stared at him for a full minute, then stood up and said, "I hope you rot." He left 2 weeks later. It wasn't the betrayal that hurt me most. It was what happened to Mom afterward. She changed. The warmth drained from her voice. Her hugs turned into quick shoulder squeezes. And every time she looked at me, it was like I reminded her of what she'd lost, and what she now expected me to become. "We have to stick together now," she said constantly. "Family is all we have." At first, I believed her. I started working part-time after school, tutoring kids in algebra, shelving books at the library. Not because she asked me to, but because I saw the unpaid bills on the kitchen counter. I figured I could help. That's what family does, right? Harper struggled emotionally, she stopped going to dance class. Jake started acting out. And Mom, she remarried within 2 years. His name was Ronald. An insurance adjuster. Quiet, polite, and permanently uninvolved. But sometimes, I'd catch him glancing at the bills on the counter. Or lingering at the doorway during Mom's guilt trips. He never spoke up, but maybe he noticed more than he let on. Mom always said, "He's a provider. That's all we need." But it wasn't true. Because every time something went wrong, I was the one she came to. At 18, I graduated valedictorian. Got a full scholarship to Northwestern. Moved into a cramped dorm and juggled classes, internships, and part-time jobs, while Harper enrolled in a $60,000 a year private art school. Guess who co-signed the loan? Mom said, "Just sign, sweetie. It's just paperwork. She needs this more than you know." That was the first time I ignored my gut. The second came 3 months after I got my first job in Chicago, financial analyst, $72,000 a year. Fresh out of college. I was just settling in when Mom called me, her voice low and tight. "Harper's car broke down. It's $2,400 to fix. And tuition's due this week. She's falling apart, Grace. Please." I wired the money that night. Harper didn't call. She texted, "Thanks, sis, lifesaver." I didn't hear from her for another month. Then Jake needed $1,200 for a coding boot camp. Ronald's hours got cut. Mom's credit card got declined at the dentist. Each request came with a reason. Each reason came with emotion. And every time I said yes, I told myself it was temporary. But it wasn't. It became expected. At family dinners, they'd drop subtle hints within earshot. "I wish we could finally replace the washing machine. It's barely holding together. If only we could afford a little weekend getaway. Haven't had one since Dad left." I kept paying. And when I hesitated, Mom would pull out the old script. "Blood is thicker than water. You're not like your father. We raised you better than that." By 24, I'd emptied my entire savings account to cover the mortgage Mom had let lapse for 3 months. I showed up that weekend to deliver groceries. And found a brand new sectional couch and a smart TV on the wall. Mom smiled and said, "Don't worry, we got a great deal. Clearance sale. After all the stress, we deserved something nice." That was the moment something in me cracked. I didn't say anything. But that night, I started tracking every dollar I sent them in a spreadsheet. I called it Red Folder, even though it lived in my Google Drive. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. It was just my sanity. By 25, I was living in a 1-bedroom apartment. Eating instant noodles 3 nights a week while Harper posted photos from a wellness retreat in Sedona. Jake had a new iPhone, even though his business hadn't launched anything except excuses. And Mom? She'd reduced her teaching hours due to stress. Her stress. Not mine. They all praised me for being so smart with money. But no one ever asked how I was really doing. No one noticed that I'd never taken a vacation. That I was working 70 hours a week. That I didn't date. Didn't rest. Didn't live. I was their cushion. Their crutch. The fixer. And deep down, I was afraid to stop, because what if saying no meant I was like Dad? But that thought didn't last. Because the day I overheard them laughing about me through the patio door, that was the day I remembered who I was. Not a wallet. Not a gift that keeps on giving. A woman. A daughter. A sister. With limits. And I was finally ready to use them. After I heard them laughing about me on the patio. Calling me a joke, a lonely mark. I sat in my car for 45 minutes. No music. No crying. Just stillness. The shame hit first. Then disbelief. Then a strange, ice-cold clarity I hadn't felt in years. That night, I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I opened my laptop and stared at the Excel file I jokingly named Red Folder 2 years earlier. It wasn't a joke anymore. It was a map of every time I said yes when I wanted to say no. A ledger of love turned into obligation. The total at the bottom? $87,450. That didn't include the most recent $3,000 I wired Mom for emergency property taxes. The same week, she posted photos of new garlands, ornaments, and 3 human-sized nutcrackers. Her caption read, "We went all out this year, Christmas magic is real." I closed my laptop and whispered out loud, "It is. Just not for me." At 2 a.m., I typed into Google, When your family uses you for money. That led me to Reddit. I found threads with titles like "My mom sees me as a bank" and "I cut off my sister and I finally feel peace." I read for hours. Strangers had lived my story. And survived it. 2 days later. I booked 2 appointments. One with a therapist who specialized in family trauma. One with a financial recovery lawyer. Dr. Elena Brooks, my therapist, was calm and clear-eyed. She listened to everything. Then said something I still remember word for word. "Grace, this isn't about being generous. It's about being conditioned. You were trained to believe your worth depends on how much you give." My second meeting was colder, more clinical. Barbara Watkins, the lawyer, reviewed my spreadsheet, skimmed some of the messages. Then looked at me with razor-sharp professionalism. "You've been operating as an unauthorized personal lender," she said. "Only without the protection, contracts, or interest." I swallowed. "Can I do anything?" She nodded. "With this documentation?" "Yes. Especially with texts promising repayment. You could recover a decent portion. Or use it as leverage." Then came the part one didn't expect. "You can also sue them." I flinched. "My own family?" Barbara didn't blink. "Grace. They made a choice when they stopped treating you like a person and started treating you like a wallet. All you're doing is acknowledging it." I walked out of her office with a folder in my hand and something heavier in my chest. Not guilt. Not fear. Something close to resolve. But I didn't file anything yet. I wasn't ready to destroy. I just wanted the truth. That's when I hired a private investigator. His name was Carter. Ex-cop. No nonsense. The kind of man who didn't ask why, just what and when. I gave him 3 names. Harper Whitman. Jake Whitman. Karen Whitman, my mother. 2 weeks later, Carter returned with a report. And that's when my heartbreak turned into betrayal. Harper had recently purchased a Lakeview cottage in Michigan with her fiancé. The down payment? $22,000. The exact amount I wired her when she said she needed surgery for a dental emergency. There was no surgery. No receipts. Just pictures of her drinking wine on a dock, captioned "Healing Space." Jake, my entrepreneurial baby brother, had never registered a business. No EIN, no LLC. Nothing. But he had bought a black BMW in cash. He kept it parked at his friend Jason's place, so I wouldn't see it during family dinners. I had sent him that money with the words, "This is a loan. With interest. Monthly payments begin in 6 months." He replied with, "Absolutely. I'm taking this seriously. You'll be proud." I was. For about a week. And then there was Mom. According to Carter, she was a VIP regular at Rivers Casino in Des Plaines. She used their loyalty card. Withdrawals, poker losses, slot machine sprees, over $40,000 in the last 18 months. During the same period she told me she had barely enough to cover the heating bill. One of the entries on her statement, dated just after I sent her money, was for a $1,600 loss at a blackjack table. In her casino rewards account, the note said, "Tier upgraded to gold, big spender." I wanted to throw up. This wasn't carelessness. It wasn't desperation. It was a system. And I was the one funding it. That night, I printed everything out. Bank transfers. Screenshots of messages. Carter's report. Photos. And I placed them all inside a real, physical, red folder. On the cover, in gold marker, I wrote, "For the record." I added letters, one for each of them. Each letter began, "This is not revenge. It's the truth. And you deserve to see it." I didn't know if I would actually go through with confronting them. But something inside me had shifted. For years, I thought saying no would make me cruel. But now I realized. Letting them keep using me, that's what was cruel. To me. And that Christmas? I wasn't going to be the gift that keeps on giving. I was going to give them the truth. Christmas morning arrived cold and bright, the kind of stillness in the air that feels like something is about to snap. I dressed with care. A crimson sweater, charcoal gray slacks, pearl earrings. Not festive. Not flashy. Just composed. In one hand, I carried a bag of neatly wrapped gifts. In the other, a second bag containing a glazed ham, 2 bottles of expensive wine. And a red folder. Tucked securely in my leather messenger satchel. I arrived precisely at 10 a.m. The driveway was already full. Harper's white Range Rover, Jake's old Honda. And Mom's beige Toyota. Not a single snowflake out of place. When I knocked, Mom swung the door open and wrapped me in a perfumed hug. "Grace, sweetheart. Merry Christmas." Her voice was warm. Bright, just like it used to be. And yet something about it felt theatrical. Come in, she said, waving me inside. The house looked like a Pottery Barn showroom. A 12-foot tree stood in the corner, glittering in silver and gold. Cranberry garlands lined the staircase. Scented candles flickered on every surface. Harper appeared from the kitchen, wearing satin pajamas and a glossy blowout. She air-kissed my cheek. "Love the sweater," she said. "Vintage?" "It's mine," I replied simply. "From last year." Jake gave me a nod from the couch, where he was already halfway through a Bloody Mary. Ronald muttered hello from behind his newspaper. We moved to the dining room for cinnamon rolls and coffee. Everything was polite. Surface level. No one asked about my job, my life, my plans. No one mentioned the money. But there was tension in the air. The kind that crackles under forced smiles. After breakfast, we gathered in the living room for gifts. Mom took command, as always. "Okay, Harper, why don't you give Grace your gift first?" Harper handed me a tiny, poorly wrapped box. Inside was a chipped mug that read, "World's Okayest Sister." Not even new. I could still smell the old coffee inside. "Cute," I said. I set it down. Jake gave me a $25 bookstore gift card. Mom and Ronald handed me a scarf I recognized from Mom's own closet. I smiled. Said thank you. And moved on. When it was my turn, I handed each of them their gift with a steady hand. Harper got sapphire earrings, carefully chosen to match her wedding jewelry. Jake received a leather portfolio embossed with his initials, professional, clean, elegant. Mom and Ronald opened a weekend getaway package to the same resort they'd mentioned long ago. Their expressions flickered between surprise and discomfort. None of them said much. Harper looked at the earrings like they were made of salt. Jake mumbled thanks and shoved the portfolio aside. Mom offered a polite nod. Then came the shift. Mom cleared her throat. "Well," she said, her voice soft. "Now that gifts are exchanged, Harper, maybe it's time." Harper stood up and faced me, arms crossed over her silk robe. "We've been talking," she said. "As a family." I set my teacup down slowly. "Have you?" "Yes," she said, gaining steam. "We've discussed our dynamic. The way things have been for years. And, we've made a decision." Jake stared at the floor. Mom dabbed her eyes with a tissue, no tears yet, just performance. Even Ronald looked uneasy now. Harper took a breath. "We had a vote. We think it's time for some space. You've become controlling, Grace. With your money. With your expectations. You use your generosity like a weapon." I blinked. Mom chimed in. "It's not about the money. It's about the tension. The guilt. The way you make everyone feel small. Jake added, still not meeting my gaze. You always throw it in our faces. Like we owe you something. Harper took a step closer. So, we're asking you to leave. Today. Take your things. Go. We need time, without you, to heal. The room fell into a quiet more brutal than yelling. I looked at each of them in turn. At Harper's carefully rehearsed cruelty. Jake's cowardice. Mom's blank expression. Ronald's detached silence. And something inside me. The last thread that tethered me to them. Snapped. Without a word, I reached into my bag and pulled out the red folder. I placed it gently beneath the Christmas tree. What's that? Harper asked, her confidence flickering. I met her eyes. Open it. No one moved. I sat back on the couch, crossed my legs, and folded my hands. The truth, I said. 7 years of it. Every loan. Every promise. Every lie. All in one place. Mom's mouth parted slightly. Harper went still. Jake looked like he might vomit. And suddenly, that perfectly curated Christmas morning wasn't so perfect anymore. The folder sat there, glowing red beneath the twinkling lights of the Christmas tree. None of them moved. Not Harper with her frozen smirk, not Jake with his bouncing knee, not Mom with her fake tears. Even Ronald set down his glass. I leaned forward, calm and steady, and unfastened the clasp. The first thing I pulled out was a spreadsheet, color-coded, with dates, amounts, recipients. I laid it gently on the coffee table for them to see. $253,842, I said. That's what I've given this family in the past 7 years. Not including small gifts, dinners, or emotional labor. Jake let out a short, forced laugh. That can't be right. I pulled out the next document. March 15, 2019, $20,000 to Jake Whitman. Labeled Business Startup Loan. I held up the printed bank receipt. You never started a business. But you did buy a black BMW. Registered under your name. Stored at Jason's house. Want me to show the photos? Jake's face turned sheet white. I slid the printed photos across the table. Harper snorted. That's stalking. No, I said, without blinking. That's documentation. That's truth. Next. November 2nd, 2020, $15,000 to Harper Whitman. For emergency dental surgery. I placed her Instagram post beside the receipt, she in a luxury cabin, wine glass in hand. Date stamped 5 days after the wire transfer. Caption reads, Healing in nature with my love. No mention of painkillers or dentists. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Mom shifted in her seat. Grace, this is a betrayal. Digging into your family's lives like this. A betrayal? I cut in. Or an audit? I turned the next page. May 7th, 2021, $6. $300 for past due mortgage payments. 4 days later, Ronald cashed in a resort getaway package. Same amount. Same weekend you told me the house was in crisis. Ronald cleared his throat. That wasn't my idea. I ignored him and looked directly at Mom. December 3rd, 2022, $4,000 for supposed heating repair. Actual location of funds, Rivers Casino. According to your VIP account statement, you hit gold tier. Congratulations. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. No. No, Grace. Do you want me to read the ATM withdrawal timestamps? They match exactly with the deposit I made. Down to the hour. Her voice trembled. It was a bad time. I wasn't thinking straight. You were betting with money I needed for my own rent, I said. My tone didn't rise. I didn't cry. That, more than anything, seemed to unnerve them. I pulled out the private investigator's summary. 3 pages. Photos. Names. Dates. And you know what's worse? I said, voice quiet now. I could have forgiven most of it. If any of you had said thank you. If any of you had cared how I was doing. No one spoke. You've watched me cancel vacations, delay buying a home, skip therapy, work myself into migraines. And never once asked why I kept showing up. Jake finally found his voice. I didn't think it was that serious. You didn't think at all, I said. Harper rolled her eyes. This is ridiculous. Who keeps a spreadsheet on their own family? People who are tired of being lied to. Mom stood, desperate now. Sweetheart, we didn't know how to ask for help. That's all it ever was. No, I said. You knew exactly how to ask. You just never cared about the cost. I stood now too, the red folder still open. You told me I was no longer part of this family. And for the first time, you were right. Harper stepped forward. Her voice rising. So what now? You're gonna sue us? Take us to court like strangers? I reached into the folder again and pulled out the final piece. A stack of envelopes. Each one labeled with a name, Harper. Jake. Karen. Ronald. I'm not suing you. Not yet. Inside each envelope is a repayment agreement. It's fair. It's legal. And it's your only chance at redemption. Jake took his but didn't open it. Harper tossed hers onto the table like it was poisoned. Mom stared at hers like it might explode. These aren't just about money, I said. They're about boundaries. Therapy is part of the condition. So is personal accountability. You're adults. If you can lie to me with such precision, you can learn how to repair. And if we don't sign? Harper asked. Then you'll get a letter from my lawyer instead. Ronald finally spoke again. Grace. I didn't know half of this. I thought you were helping because you wanted to. I was, I said, turning to him. But love doesn't mean emptying yourself dry so others can live comfortably in denial. Mom's face crumpled. I never wanted to hurt you. I looked at her gently, calm but resolute. No. You just wanted me to keep bleeding quietly. I picked up the folder and tucked it back into my bag. You have until New Year's Day to decide. Your next chapter begins with your choice. And just like that, I turned and walked out the door. When I stepped outside, the air hit different. The cold didn't sting like it used to. It cleared my lungs. It made space in my chest, space I hadn't felt in years. I walked to my car with the same steady pace I'd used inside. No slamming doors. No shouting. Just silence, powerful and earned. But I hadn't even made it halfway down the driveway when the front door burst open behind me. Grace. Harper, barefoot in her slippers, stormed after me, cheeks flushed with fury. You can't just drop a bomb like that and walk away. I turned around slowly. I didn't drop a bomb. I presented facts. There's a difference. Jake appeared next, shivering in his hoodie, followed by Mom, still clutching her envelope like it might disappear. Even Ronald came out, hands shoved deep in his coat pockets, eyes avoiding mine. They formed a loose semicircle on the porch. But it didn't feel like a family anymore. It felt like a courtroom. Jake tried to play peacemaker. Can we all just breathe for a second? This doesn't have to be so extreme. I raised an eyebrow. Jake, you voted me out of the family 15 minutes ago. I'd say that was pretty extreme. He winced. That wasn't my idea. It was Harper's. Harper snapped her head toward him. You agreed. I didn't think she'd actually show up with legal documents. Mom cut in, voice cracking. Sweetheart, we didn't mean to hurt you. You know how things get around the holidays. Everyone's stressed. Tensions are high. I held up a hand. Stop. Don't reduce this to holiday stress. You planned this. You rehearsed it. I turned toward Harper. You voted to remove me from the family because I stopped giving you money. Say it. She crossed her arms. Fine. You made things difficult. You always act like you're better than us. No, I said, calmly. I act like someone who's tired. Tired of pretending that love equals sacrifice. Tired of being everyone's safety net but never their priority. Ronald finally stepped forward, speaking low. I didn't know, Grace. About the money. About the gambling. Karen always told me you helped with emergencies. I looked at him. And you never questioned why every emergency came with brand new furniture and holiday trips? His shoulders slumped. I didn't want to ask. I guess. I didn't want to see it. Willful ignorance is still a choice, Ronald. There was a long pause. Only the wind and the distant sound of kids playing on another street. Then Mom's voice cracked, really cracked. I have a problem, she whispered. Tears filled her eyes. I didn't want to admit it. I thought I could fix it with just one more win. The casino made me feel alive. Like I was in control again. Harper turned to her, stunned. The second mortgage, you said it was for repairs. Mom shook her head. Jake stepped back, rubbing his jaw. Oh my God. This was the first moment of actual truth I'd seen from any of them. And for a second, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness, but understanding. Still, I stayed firm. I'm glad you said that, I told Mom. That's step one. But it doesn't erase what's been done. Harper scoffed. So what, we have to sign these agreements like criminals? No, I said. You don't have to sign anything. You can walk away. But so will I. Jake looked down at the envelope in his hands. I don't have that kind of money, he mumbled. You have time, I said. And the plan takes your income into account. You can also pay in effort, community service, part-time jobs, accountability. I'm not chasing perfection. I'm asking for progress. Mom looked up. Her voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. If we agree to all of this, can we still be a family again? I hesitated, because that question hurt more than all the insults combined. I don't know. I said honestly. That depends on what you do next. Trust takes longer to rebuild than money. I handed them each a copy of the terms again. You have until New Year's Day. No contact until then. Think about what you want, really want. Not from me, but from yourselves. And then, without waiting for another word, I got into my car and drove away. The next 3 days were quiet. No calls. No texts. No guilt bombs dropped on my doorstep. Then, on the 4th day, a message. From Mom. I went to my first Gamblers Anonymous meeting today. It was awful. And necessary. Thank you for the wake-up call. Then one from Jake. I sold the BMW. It hurt, but I needed to. Starting work next week at a tech support center. And finally, Harper. No apology. Just one line. I'll sign. But I'm only doing it because I'm tired of the drama. Not perfect. Not healed. But real. And for the first time in years, I slept peacefully. 6 months later, I sat in Dr. Brooks's office, legs crossed, sipping peppermint tea. Outside her window, the trees were in full bloom. Summer in Chicago had arrived with all its usual humidity and promise. How are you feeling about tomorrow? She asked, glancing at her notes. I smiled softly. Nervous. But grounded. It's the first time we'll all be in the same room again. No lawyers. No tension. Just dinner. She nodded. And your boundaries? Firm, I said. I've learned to hold them. Even when it's uncomfortable. After Christmas, everything had changed. Harper signed the agreement, reluctantly, and with more eye-rolling than acknowledgement. But she followed through. Monthly payments. Therapy once a week, though I heard she hated it. We weren't close. Probably never would be. But she stopped asking for anything. Jake was different. He started working full-time at a tech support center downtown. Sold the BMW. He called me one night in April just to say, for once, I paid rent with money I earned. It felt good. Like I wasn't just coasting anymore. Mom was the biggest surprise. She kept going to Gamblers Anonymous. Found a financial coach. Went back to teaching part-time, this time because she wanted to, not because she had to. She even sent me her first repayment check with a handwritten note. I can never undo what I did. But I can start doing better. I hope that matters. It did. But none of that would have meant anything if I hadn't started doing better for myself, too. In February, I bought a condo. 2 bedrooms. Corner unit. Balcony with a view of the skyline. I filled it with furniture I chose. Plants I actually kept alive. And silence that was finally peaceful, not heavy. I joined a book club. Started volunteering at a local financial literacy nonprofit. And slowly, gently, I let new people into my life. One of them was Ethan, an architect I met at a fundraiser. Funny. Soft-spoken. Kind in a way I had forgotten existed. He never asked what I could do for him. He just showed up. Made me laugh. Took me hiking in places without cell service. For the first time in my adult life, I was in a relationship that didn't feel like a transaction. One afternoon in May, while we drank coffee on my balcony, he asked, "So, the red folder. Do you still have it?" I smiled. "I do," I said. "But it's different now." It no longer held receipts, screenshots, evidence of betrayal. Now it held journal pages, letters to myself. Photos of progress. Affirmations I'd written on hard days. And a photo of me, standing alone in front of that tree last Christmas. Not broken. But free. Ethan didn't say anything. He just reached over and held my hand. "Tomorrow night, we'll have dinner. Me, Mom, Jake, Harper, Ronald. Neutral territory. No mention of money. Everyone pays their own bill." That was one of the new rules. I don't expect miracles. I don't expect apologies. I don't even expect comfort. What I do expect is clarity. Because here's what I've learned. You can't force people to love you the right way. You can only choose how long you let them love you the wrong way. Family isn't blood. It's behavior. And forgiveness doesn't mean returning to the same dynamic. Sometimes it means releasing the anger, while keeping the door locked. If you've ever been the fixer in your family, the one who gave too much, too often, for too little in return, I want you to know this. You are not selfish for choosing peace. You are not cruel for setting boundaries. You are not broken for wanting to be loved without conditions. Your voice matters. Your story matters. And your freedom? It begins the moment you stop waiting for their apology and start giving yourself permission to heal. The red folder wasn't revenge. It wasn't even closure. It was a beginning. Thank you for listening to my story. If any part of this resonated with you, leave a comment and tell me where you're watching from. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, send it to them. Because no one deserves to feel used in the name of love. Take care. And remember, sometimes, choosing yourself is the most generous thing you'll ever do.